The one and only Digital Foundry guys have talked about Steam machine pricing, which I am here for because I am very interested in the device. But I think it all comes down to price, as do most things. If this is one of those devices that comes in at like $1,000, I am way less interested than if it comes in at like $500. As is true, I'm sure, for most people. That's one of those no-duh statements. But I think it's crucial because this, I think, fits within a very specific niche of the industry. Once you get to 1,000, the types of desktop PCs you'd be able to build yourself that are not small form factor become way more compelling. So I think that whole audience falls off pretty quickly once you get to that price range. Whereas if it's in that like $500-$600 range, then you start to appeal to maybe people who are interested in getting into PC gaming but don't want to build a whole PC. They could get into that with the Steam machine and use it that way to access Steam. And also it appeals to people who want like a set-top box to be able to play Steam games on their TV in their living room and stuff. But let's see what we're dealing with.
The first thing we really need to talk about is what wasn't revealed, which was the pricing. And wow, I mean, we're looking at a Q1 2026 release. And we've got a machine which I think is fair to say, if you looked at the top of the Steam hardware survey, the spec that they've put together is essentially very similar to, like, you know, the most popular CPU, the most popular GPU. So it's quite an interesting spec choice there. But the fact that they're unable to tell us about pricing at this time, Oliver, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about it. I went through my notes from when we discussed it, and they seem to indicate that they might not have a straightforward price for at this time, but it did seem like they were going to maybe give us more of an indication at this time, and they didn't really give us any indication as far as I'm aware, for at least for Steam Machine, a little bit more for Steam Frame, which we can talk about in a minute. But I think it's really hard to come up with a fair price for these products, in part because of DRAM pricing, which is like a global issue. And there you just have like spot prices for like DDR5 kits going up into crazy levels as, you know, the AI boom is eating up all the supply of DRAM and forcing various suppliers to retool their production lines to produce more server RAM and HBM and things like this. That's not...
Yeah, I wasn't aware of this, but apparently like DRAM right now is ungodly. Apparently it's gone up like 2 to 3x over what it was just like a matter of months ago. It's like actually insane. So you remember back when like the crypto boom really started in like, what was it? Was it right around COVID, right before maybe, where all GPUs were getting bought up by server farms because they were all mining for Bitcoin and stuff. And eventually that settled out. I don't remember exactly how. Maybe NVIDIA locked it down. I don't remember exactly how it ended up not being an issue anymore. But that was the last time like we really saw those crazy spikes. But now, right now, DRAM apparently is just ridiculously expensive. So they don't want to lock down pricing because that might continue to get worse and be more expensive. And they also, I'm sure, are worried about things like tariffs and potential impacts there as well. There's just a lot of question marks right now, and it's dangerous to announce pricing on something that's coming out in like 6 months when there's a lot of question marks, you know.
Ideal. The other issue, of course, is tariffs, where, I mean, we've talked about this a few times in the context of like the ROG Ally devices, but like it really depends on the way things are assembled, and the Section 301 tariffs apply differently if the system is a console, for instance, classified as a console, or a PC, right? That all differs. I think that the higher prices that people are suggesting, like $600 in that range, are probably a little bit more reasonable. I don't think it's going to compete necessarily with PS5 directly on price. In a really fulsome manner, maybe more closer to the Series X in terms of pricing, which itself has been inflated considerably in price since its launch there. But yeah, I think maybe a $600 price tag would be reasonable. I think they might announce some details on that in the new year, but I think a $600 price tag would be more reasonable for that system. I think the Steam controller will probably be something like $80 or $100. It's a pretty high-tech piece of kit. And then, of course, comes with the Steam machines. That might add a little bit to the bill of materials there as well. If you think about it, for Steam Frame, they've indicated that it'll be below the price in the index flat out, which is a $1,000 machine. So here I think maybe $800 or $900 would be reasonable. And I think that actually makes a lot of sense because it has unique capabilities. It can do special things with SteamOS. It can do all kinds of cool things with standalone PC games. If you want a VR gaming device and really a VR, not XR device, and a gaming device, not a multimedia device, I think it's probably like the best thing in the market at the moment, or at least it will be when it launches in early 2026. So I think there the price proposition, even though it's a narrower slice of a smaller market potentially, it is a really cool device that I think people are going to be really attracted to, kind of independent of that price tag almost.
Real quick question. If he's right and the price point is 600, is that a compelling enough price? Like 600 to me, I feel, because let me explain my use case. For me, I have a gaming PC already on my desk. I don't need to buy a mini Steam machine to play Steam games. There are going to be people for whom this fits very, very specifically, where they are like a console player and they have never had access to Steam or PC gaming, and this will let them get access to it. And at $600, I think that that is a reasonable price for them to be able to come in at the expense of like a high-end console and get access to the Steam library and everything like that. They can plug it into their TV and experience it that way. And I think for them, it makes sense. For me, it's not replacing or going in place of a PC. For me, this would basically be a machine to plug into a TV upstairs and use to like play games I'm playing on my PC, but pick them up where I left them off, just like on the Steam Deck, but on my TV. So if I want to play, like maybe I have friends over and we want to play Jackbox, but I don't want to have to hook up a laptop to the screen, this could do that. If I want to play Civilization on a massive screen, I can do that. If I want to play an RPG like a Rue Valley or Disco Elysium, nothing like super graphically intensive, but I just want to play a game like that on a bigger screen, I'd play it on the Steam machine. For me, that's where this would fit. And at $600, again, at the price point of like a higher end console, not quite a PS5 Pro, but not quite as cheap as like a PS5 or Series X, or maybe Series X. I don't remember where it's priced at right now, but I think that that's on the high end of my tolerance. I think once we pass like 650, 700, I become much, much less likely to buy it. 600, I'd say, is like the limit of where I'm at. Personally, let's see, 700 to 1,000 depending on storage options. Maybe, I mean, if it's 600 for what did they say, was it 256 or 512? If it's 600 for the lowest storage tier, and then it's like 750 for the 1 terabyte, 900 for 2 terabyte or something, I think that could work. I would still personally, I would just go and put a micro SD card in there, because I'm not going to be putting like cutting edge games on the device. It's mainly going to be for smaller stuff. But you can also expand the M.2 NVMe SSD if you want to. So there's options for sure. You can buy a 2 terabyte NVMe SSD for $120. You can. What they did say is that replacing the NVMe SSD is going to be more involved. My understanding is that it's not going to be just pop it out, plop in the new one, because the OS is on that NVMe SSD. So you'll have to do something, probably like to the NVMe SSD, install SteamOS to it before you put it in the machine, and then continue from there. So I don't think it's going to be as simple as like on a console when you just put more storage in. It'll actually be requiring you to like actually manually swap it out, but still not the end of the world. It's just difficult. The problem is going to be the VRAM. Well, one thing that I'm sure they currently have already is mass orders. So like Steam did not just decide to make this thing, you know, like they've been working on this for a while. So I'm sure that they have a lot of stuff already lined up. They have orders placed for all the components they need to assemble. But the problem is, like, say they manufacture, I don't know how many units they'd manufacture, 50,000 units, 100,000 units in the first run. They got specific pricing, and maybe because they ordered it 6 months ago or a year ago, they got good pricing on that first run of 100,000 units. The second run, of 200,000 units might be at today's pricing, which is way more. And so just because they ordered stuff and started production before the DRAM got crazy doesn't mean that they can't account for that now. And that might be part of the problem. And of course, right now they've opened it up. You can wish list it on Steam. I'm sure they're gauging through all sorts of metrics, the interest and how many people would buy this thing so they can manufacture enough. And so I'm sure they're doing a lot of very complicated math to figure out what they need to do in order to achieve their specific targets. But it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. But I think 600 is, for me at least, it's towards the high end of what I would find compelling.
Right. Okay. There's a lot to wade through there. I think the entire concept of a console versus PC price differential there is raising a lot of questions, because typically, traditionally, the concept is that a console is a kind of mainstream priced device, and the cost of it is offset by the cost of software. And Valve is pretty much the only person in the only entity in the PC ecosystem that can do that, because they get, whatever it is, 30% of every software sale on Steam. So, they're in a pretty good position to actually subsidize hardware. But the only reason they would do that is if it actually brings about more games being sold, right, to offset the cost there.
But I think it's not just more games, period. It's, I think, specifically if they are growing the tent, right? If they are getting console players into the Steam ecosystem who previously have never been in the Steam ecosystem, then yeah, if you can reduce the price, subsidize it, they eat a little bit of cost when they're selling it. Maybe it costs them $750 to manufacture, but they sell it at $600 in order to just get it on your desktop to start selling you games, and they can make up the difference. Then it works if you're a new customer. If you're an established customer like I am, subsidizing it, it's almost certainly not going to lead to additional sales. I'm still going to buy all the games that I'm already buying. Like, maybe I'm spending more time on your platform because now I can play Steam games elsewhere, and maybe that's part of the thought process. But I personally don't anticipate them discounting heavily. Loxy, the SSD wasn't that involved. It was the RAM that was involved. No, from what I recall, I think it was in the Linus Tech Tips video, the RAM replacement is very involved, because they said that will physically require you to take off like the heat sink. It'll have you undoing screws, literally taking the machine apart to access it, and then you have to reassemble everything. But what they said was replacing the SSD, because the OS is on the SSD. It's not like there's an internal storage and then an SSD port. The SSD is all of the storage, so the OS is on it. So my understanding is that you'll have to either clone the NVMe across to the new one or something like that. Maybe by the time they launch, they'll have some fix for that. They'll have some really small amount of onboard storage to streamline that process. I don't know, but my understanding, at least as of right now, is that replacing the SSD will be software involved, but not hardware involved. It'll just be pop off the bottom and you put on the new SSD, but you'll have to do some heavy lifting elsewhere. Jack, thank you for the 5. Do we know if they sell the Steam Deck above or below price? I don't know if we know at this point. What I do know is that the Steam Deck pricing is actually quite compelling. Like, I still can't get over how cheap the entry level one is. Like, it's $399 for the base model. That's kind of crazy, especially you look elsewhere. Like, what's the ROG Ally at now? ROG Ally, the Legion, let's see. Xbox ROG Ally is $699 or $649. Yeah, so the basic white one, this technically launched, I think, 2 years ago, but this one is like $649 today. And it does outperform technically the Steam Deck. It has like a 1080p screen. It has it can run games technically a bit higher. The battery life is hot donkey ass, though. I will say that it's like all of 45 minutes. It's rough. So it's technically more powerful, but it's like, I don't know if it's that much more usable. But the Steam Deck OLED, ooh baby, ooh baby. Honest question, maybe somebody knows. Is there a handheld that is OLED other than the Steam Deck OLED? Like, is the Legion Go OLED? I don't think the new ROG Ally Xbox ones are OLED either. I don't think so. The Switch, well, not the new Switch, the OG Switch. The Legion Go 2 is OLED. Is that available yet? Legion Go 2. Oh, it says it's no longer available. Legion Go S. Why is it no longer available? Help me understand. That's weird. Maybe they're just not selling it at their place. I don't know. But it's sold down on Xbox. Are they still selling it? It just came out. Oh, it's just sold out because it's new. Oh, okay. Well, if it's OLED, I get it. I get it. Once you go OLED, man, you can't go back. Tell you what.
They could definitely do a $399 console, but it would cost them a lot of money. I've got to wonder how they'll do that. But at the same time, they did do a $399 handheld, which they did acknowledge at the time was costing them a lot of money. So it really depends on.
So at the time, they said it was being sold at a loss at the time that they launched it. Today, it might not be because they can, typically over time, production costs drop as volume goes up. But that's crazy. If they were to get the Steam machine down to 400, that would be wild. I don't think anybody's expecting that. But if they can get it to like 500, 600, ooh, this thing will sell out crazy fast.
What the strategic play is, why are they actually making the device, and will it be worthwhile for them to actually take the hit on the build costs there and effectively sell them at a loss? The problem is, I think, that when you compare it to console, you've got here a spec that is, how can I say it? It's kind of like slightly better than PlayStation 5 in some regards, but probably a fair bit worse on the GPU side. And yet it's coming out like 5 and a bit years after the PlayStation 5 for a much more expensive price point. So if the strategy here is to actually grab some console market share, I don't think that's going to happen. Which kind of then brings into question, well, why are they making the device if it's not to expand the total addressable market for Steam? I think there's a lot going on there. Maybe they've been forced into some unwelcome pricing decisions by the fact that, we are in these weird times where things are costing a lot more money. On the DRAM side of things, I can't imagine Valve are paying spot price.
No.
Surely they would have allocated a supply of memory modules.
It is interesting to think that, like, what is the target audience for this? Is it console players? Are they trying to win over console players? Is it just expanding the tent of PC gamers and giving them new devices? I'm not totally sure. For me, at least, it seems like this is a device aimed at providing the Steam library into a console form factor and ease of use. And in that pursuit, I think it is compelling, at least to somebody like me. But based on their hardware decisions, maybe they just found if they were to crank this thing up to get it to compete with like a PS5 in terms of actual power, it wouldn't be quite on that level, but or it'd be too expensive. I'm not sure. But it seems in terms of power that this is above an Xbox Series S, but it's below a PS5. So it's somewhere in between. But in theory, if a game is launching on Series S, you should be able to play it on the Steam machine, just probably not at like 4K or anything. But yeah, that's where the pricing really, really comes in, because the pricing determines also who it's for. Because my use case is like, that'd be nice to have, but it's far from like, I need it regardless of price, Like for a handheld that is ultra premium, allows me to play games on the go at a very, very high fidelity, I'm willing to spend a lot more money on that because it's a very specific use case that I'm willing to go for, and I really want that. For like playing games like Jackbox on the big TV, I don't need that. It'd be nice. It'd be nice to be able to like play games I was playing on my PC up there. Like, it'd be nice, but it's far from like a need or like a strong want, you know. None of it's a need technically, but still.
Like a long time ago, once they'd firmed up the spec and they'd understood when they were going to release it. But I guess for future, future production runs, that might be a completely different story, right? Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, well, there is a lot to say here. I think pricing, if you just look at this from a consumer's perspective, avoiding the console comparison, I think what they're going to give you for the price is going to be lower than building the most equivalent spec'd AMD machine that you can get, because you'd be paying different kind of I would say fees to the motherboard manufacturer, to the case manufacturer, heatsink fan manufacturer.
Frankie donated $9.99.
Thank you, Eric.
Super chat. Emo, the target audience is my fellow emulation degenerates and 30-year-olds whose backs hurt from desk gaming. I hope the price point makes sense.
Yeah, well, the idea of playing Steam games, like PC games, but being able to play them on your couch is a vibe. And I know you can build a PC, put it in your living room on your TV. You can technically do that, but it's a lot more hassle, because it's not
Caleb
designed for
92
that.
donated $10 through Super Chat. Once again, the Series S that everyone shits on is proving itself useful to gamers. How many games wouldn't work on the Steam Deck or the new machine if $M didn't make games run feature complete on S?
Well, Caleb, it's funny you bring that up also, is because Phil Spencer said in an interview that he felt they were uniquely positioned to do a handheld well, because their games were all being built around the Series S hardware, which he, of course, didn't say that it was a weak machine, but he framed it as it is a machine that if you can develop for that and optimize for it, it's very easy to scale that to a handheld device, because 5 years after the fact, modern handhelds are roughly, in terms of power, about on the level of like a Series S, if not like a little under, a little over, but it's around there. But it's an Xbox. We are all Xbox. So it's funny you say that, because it actually, I think honestly, it was one of the unintended advantages of doing the Series S the way that they did. At the time, I think it was just supposed to be a cheaper budget option to get people to buy Xboxes at a lower price point and then sign up for Game Pass to make up some of the money. But 5 years after the fact, when they're pushing for handhelds, it was like a happy little accident that now it's easier to port games that have to be optimized for it. But I think for the health of the generation, the Series S has held back the generation pretty significantly. Unfortunately, hate to say it, I have a Series S. And, I understand the appeal of it and the benefit of it, but I think it's definitely held back the generation. Arthur, thank you for the sub, my friend.
AMD themselves, for the GPU and CPU, power supply, you're essentially going to be getting the nice subsidizing effect there on the hardware components in comparison to what you would get for building your own PC, I presume, here. That otherwise, the buy-in beyond the simplicity is not as, I would say, as enticing. I think it's got to feel like a deal, in at least for some people in some market, and I think that's going to be for those who would be maybe opting to grab a pre-built or grab their own PC that they built themselves. And I think they're going to actually target a lower price there. But whether or not they need to and will be console pricing that we were just talking about, this like PS5-esque experience, I don't know how necessary that is, even though I would really love that to be the case. It would be amazing if there was a good enough spec'd machine that could run a lot of games and was cheap, like a console is, in an all-in-one form factor. That'd be wonderful. But at the same time, due to the market this may or may not be addressing, that may not be a necessity. Because like you said, if you've already only been convinced by consoles, I'm not sure this is the thing for you. But if you're a lot of those people in the Steam hardware survey who still have like GTX 1650s and really janky old Core i3s, or something like that.
Real question. Is anybody in chat right now? Are you running a gaming PC with an i3 processor in it? This is a time for honesty, to step forward Tell your fellow man. Hex nah. That's insane. Nope. Most definitely not. No. Brokey. I promise we're not going to make fun of you. It's okay. It's okay. I did in 2009. Dude, I remember shopping around for computer parts in 2015 and looking around at like what kind of PC build I could come up with, and like i3 was the one in my price range. And I remember looking up to see like games, and you know, they do the side-by-side comparisons of different hardware. Like, what does this game look like running on an i3 and on this graphics card versus this versus that? And I was like, okay, I gotta save up a little more because the i3 is it was a low tier. It was i3, i5, i7. i3 was like the processor you use if you are like sending emails and stuff, and that's about it. i5 was like pretty solid mid-tier. i7 was like desktop class, that's good. Eventually they started doing like i9 and higher end stuff, but yeah, i3 was the basic. Below that was like Pentium. I think that wasn't there another one below Pentium as well. There was one even beneath that was like really, really low level, but I don't remember what it was called. Like Celeron, maybe? Celeron, yeah. Oh, those were the days. Anyway, with all this, I think again the price point is just going to be very interesting and very important. As for, you know, as the title suggests, what's a fair price? I think the fair price is certainly going to be higher than whatever they end up bringing it out at. Like, as you can see here, if this thing is $500 or less, I'm absolutely buying one for my living room. And I think a lot of people on the PC space have that mindset of like, if it's at like below this threshold, yeah, sure, I'll grab one like for Christmas or whatever. I'll grab one, add it to my living room setup. It'll be great. If it starts to approach like an actual PC, I think a lot of people just go, I'll just build a PC, you know, or whatever. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of competitors who are building, like, you can go on Reddit and you'll see mini PC builds where people put SteamOS on the computer and just make their own Steam machine. And that'll just be more compelling. Like, especially if you start to approach that $1,000 price point, I think that's what's going to happen. I feel validated though, as you can see. $500 to $600 anymore, and I think it'll struggle. I agree. Valve, this is your chance to completely change the game. Sell it for $4.99. Take the short-term loss. You don't have shareholders. You flipping bought a yacht, Gabe, for $500 million. Disrupt the entire market. You will win if you do. We'll make it back in Steam game sales. Common Valve, don't stuff it up now. I do think if they came in at 500, the math changes. Like, I think at 500, this thing becomes very, very popular. Very popular. It's just whether or not they can tolerate that. Let's see. Linus pointed out that selling it at a loss invites the prospect of businesses making bulk orders with no intention of buying a Steam game simply because it would be a cost-effective strategy against an equivalent mini PC. Not sure how much of a problem that would be in practice. My bones tell me $700 with a controller. Oh, maybe they do it that way where they sell it at like 600 with no controller, and if you want a Steam controller included, it's like 700, or it's 675 or 680 or something. Maybe they do it that way. They just don't include a controller in the box to save. I don't know if they've confirmed if they're selling it with a controller in the box or not, but that could be interesting. That could be a good way to save a little bit of cash. Not sure though. Not sure. His bones can speak. Yes. Get a run Borderlands 4. Not much can. I shouldn't say that. I don't know if they fixed it or not. I think a lot of publishers now though are getting a little spooked and are aware that like bad performance can tank an otherwise very successful and appealing game. And so I think that was like the main problem for Borderlands 4 was the performance. So it's interesting to see how that's gonna play out. Better be a great controller for that price. I mean, most controllers now I think are just freakishly expensive. Like, I think the Joy-Cons excuse me, for the Switch 2 are also stupid expensive too, right? They're $100. $100. It's wild. Controllers are just expensive, dude. crazy expensive. The Joy-Cons have the Nintendo tax, which their fans pay. Well, hey, they got fans that are willing to tolerate just about whatever they want to do. Why bother? Why bother doing anything else? Wonder what the Elite 3 will cost. More. I can guarantee you more.